The boy chosen by a billionaire. But for the darkest reason. At first glance, it looked like a miracle. 11-year-old Sam, who had known nothing but cold orphanage walls, was suddenly chosen by one of the richest men in the country. He left behind threadbare blankets for silk sheets, watery soup for golden feasts, and lonely nights for a sprawling mansion by the sea. Everyone whispered how lucky he was. What orphan wouldn't want such a life? But beneath the polished marble floors and crystal chandeliers, secrets festered. Doors locked tight, staff whispering behind closed halls, a pale girl watching him from the balcony with eyes full of sorrow. Something about her gaze unsettled Sam, as if she was warning him, "Run while you still can." The truth, when it surfaced, was darker than anything a child should ever have to face. Sam hadn't been chosen out of love. He had been chosen for something else entirely, something that could cost him his life. And it was only the instinct of a German shepherd and the courage of a detective who refused to look away that kept Sam from becoming another name lost in silence. The orphanage sat at the edge of the city like a forgotten relic. Its bricks were faded, its windows fogged with years of fingerprints and breath. Inside, laughter had long ago been replaced by restless murmurs, the kind of sounds children made when they knew too much about disappointment. Sam Hayes, just 11 years old, had grown up with that sound. He had memorized the clatter of the dinner trays, the squeak of the floorboards, the tired way the caretakers sighed as they tucked kids into beds that were never quite warm enough. For years he had dreamed of someone walking through the front doors, pointing at him and saying, "That's the one, that's my boy." That morning, the impossible happened. The headmistress, Ms. Alden, hurried into the common room, her face pale and fluttery like paper in the wind. "Children," she said, pressing her hands together, "we have a very special guest today." The door opened, and the room seemed to breathe in all at once. A man in a tailored charcoal suit stepped inside, flanked by 2 assistants. His shoes gleamed as though the earth itself was unworthy of scuffing them. Alexander Whitmore, a name even the children had heard, whispered in news reports and charity bulletins. He was the billionaire with estates on 3 continents, the man who cut ribbons at hospitals and orphanages, whose face appeared on glossy covers smiling beside politicians. Here he was, in the flesh. The children straightened in their chairs. Some tugged at their sleeves, others tried to smooth their hair. A girl named Lacey whispered, "Maybe he's here for me." Another boy, older and hardened, muttered, "Don't be stupid. People like him don't adopt kids like us." Sam said nothing. He only stared. Whitmore's eyes, sharp and calculating even beneath the practiced warmth of his smile, swept the room. His assistants handed Ms. Alden a folder. Papers rustled. And then, almost casually, his gaze settled on Sam. "You," Whitmore said. His voice was deep, commanding, a voice used to being obeyed. "What's your name?" Sam swallowed hard. His throat felt dry, but the word came out steady. "Sam Hayes, sir." The billionaire's smile broadened. "Sam," he repeated, as though tasting it. "Yes. I think you'll do." The room erupted in gasps. Lacey's face crumpled. She turned away before the tears came. The older boy scoffed, but couldn't hide the sting of envy. Even Ms. Alden, who had mastered the art of hiding her emotions, couldn't disguise her astonishment. Sam blinked. His heart thundered against his ribs. "Me?" He looked around, almost expecting someone to laugh and reveal it was a cruel joke. But Whitmore's assistants were already approaching, papers in hand, speaking briskly about signatures and transfers. "You mean, you want me?" Sam asked, voice trembling with disbelief. Whitmore knelt slightly so his face was level with the boy's. The man's eyes didn't quite match his smile. They were cold, like stones at the bottom of a well. Still, the words he spoke wrapped around Sam like a blanket. "Yes, Samuel," Whitmore said smoothly. "I want you to come home with me. You deserve better than this place." For the first time in years, Sam felt the weight of the orphanage lift from his shoulders. The peeling paint, the second-hand shoes, the endless waiting, all of it seemed to crumble away. He wasn't just another forgotten child anymore. He was chosen. The other kids gathered in small clusters, their whispers buzzing like flies. Why him? What's so special about Sam? It should have been me. Their jealousy stung, but Sam barely noticed. He was staring at the papers, at Whitmore's steady hand guiding the pen, at Ms. Alden's reluctant signature. When the last line was signed, Ms. Alden cleared her throat. "Well then, Sam, it seems you've found yourself a new family." Her tone wavered between forced cheer and quiet unease. She crouched to hug him, her arms thin and trembling. "Be good, dear. Remember what we talked about. Manners, gratitude." Sam clung to her for a heartbeat longer than he intended. She had been stern, sometimes harsh, but she was the closest thing to stability he had known. Now, in a blink, she was fading into the background as Whitmore's assistant gently steered him toward the door. Outside, a sleek black car waited, its doors opening silently as if by magic. The leather seats swallowed Sam whole. He pressed his fingers against the cool glass of the window, watching the orphanage grow smaller and smaller until it was nothing but a smudge of red brick against the gray city skyline. Inside his chest, hope surged like wildfire. For once, the world had chosen him. Whitmore sat across from him, watching. "Tell me, Sam," he said, his tone smooth. "What is it you've always wanted most?" Sam hesitated, unsure if it was a test. Then he whispered the truth. "A family. Someone who wants me." Whitmore's lips curved upward, but his eyes remained unreadable. "Then perhaps, Samuel, you've finally found what you've been waiting for." The car glided down the avenue, carrying Sam away from the only life he'd ever known, into a future he could not yet imagine. One that shimmered with promises of warmth, but hid shadows deep enough to swallow him whole. The car moved like a shadow along the coastal road, its engine so quiet, Sam could hear the crash of waves beyond the glass. He leaned toward the window, his forehead pressing lightly against the cool surface, eyes widening at the endless stretch of water. The sea was gray and restless, white spray leaping against black rocks. To a boy who had known nothing but the crowded blocks of the city, the sight was almost too big to take in. Then the mansion came into view. It rose out of the cliffside like something carved from another century. Stone walls, turrets, balconies laced with ironwork that caught the last traces of evening light. The place seemed part fortress, part palace, a house that had witnessed storms and held its ground without flinching. For Sam, it was like stepping into the pages of a storybook. The gates opened without a sound. The car wound its way through manicured gardens, where lanterns glowed faintly against trimmed hedges. Marble statues stood among the roses, faces of forgotten gods, forever watching. Sam's mouth parted. It was all so far from the peeling paint and narrow corridors of the orphanage that it didn't feel real. Alexander Whitmore, sitting opposite him, noticed. His smile was polished, a man pleased with his own generosity. "Beautiful, isn't it?" he asked. Sam nodded quickly. "It's like a castle." Whitmore's lips curved faintly. "And every castle needs a prince, Samuel. Perhaps now you are mine." The words thrilled and unsettled him all at once. The car stopped at the grand steps of the mansion. The door opened, and Sam stepped out onto a stone that seemed to hum with history. Massive oak doors, taller than any he'd ever seen, swung open to reveal a row of staff waiting in precise formation. They bowed their heads slightly as Whitmore entered. "Welcome home, sir," murmured one, his accent clipped and proper. Their eyes, however, barely flickered to Sam. Their hands stayed folded, their postures rigid. Sam expected warmth, or at least curiosity. But what he felt instead was the cold air of formality, like stepping into a place where affection had no currency. "Mr. Whitmore," a butler intoned, "the east wing has been prepared as instructed." "Excellent," Whitmore replied, his voice smooth. He turned to Sam, laying a hand on the boy's shoulder. "This is Samuel Hayes. He is my son now. Treat him accordingly." The words should have filled Sam with pride. Yet he noticed how the staff stiffened ever so slightly, how their eyes flicked to one another, unspoken thoughts darting between them like shadows. A maid stepped forward, a silver tray balanced in her hands with a glass of milk and a plate of sugared biscuits. She bent low, offering it to Sam. "For you, young master," she said softly. He took it, mumbling thanks, but the smile she gave him faltered quickly under Whitmore's gaze. She retreated into the line like a soldier, back into rank. Sam's eyes traveled upward. High above the sweeping staircase, at the edge of a dimly lit balcony, someone stood. A girl, no older than 15, draped in pale silks. Her skin was ashen, her frame fragile, as though the very air pressed too heavily on her. Long hair, the color of chestnuts, framed a face with eyes that seemed both too old and too tired for her years. Her gaze met Sam's for the briefest of moments. It wasn't curiosity or welcome that shone there. It was something colder, almost a warning. Then she turned, disappearing into the shadows of her chamber. "Evelyn," Whitmore said casually, noticing Sam's glance. "My daughter. She is unwell. You will meet her properly in time." Unwell. The word hung in the air, heavy, final. The butler led them down hallways that stretched endlessly, lined with portraits whose painted eyes followed Sam wherever he went. Chandeliers glittered overhead, but their light seemed dim against the vastness of the rooms. Every step echoed. Every corner held silence that felt carefully arranged, as though nothing spontaneous was allowed to live here. They reached a chamber near the east wing. The doors opened to reveal a room prepared for Sam. A canopy bed with embroidered sheets, shelves stacked with books and toys still smelling of varnish, a wardrobe of clothes in sizes slightly too large, but clearly waiting to be grown into. Sam froze in the doorway. He had never seen anything like it. At the orphanage, he had shared a creaky bunk bed with 2 other boys, his belongings fitting into a single drawer. Here, the space itself seemed to breathe wealth. "Do you like it?" Whitmore asked, standing tall, his eyes watching the boys' every reaction. Sam's throat tightened. It's amazing." Whitmore's hand settled once again on his shoulder, firm, almost heavy. "Then it is yours. Everything here is yours. Remember that." He wanted to believe it. He wanted to let the warmth of the words wash over him. But when Whitmore left the room, his footsteps fading into the hollow halls, Sam found himself staring at the balcony once more. He could still feel Evelyn's eyes on him, the look she had given before vanishing, a look that whispered, "You are not safe here." Sam shivered, though the fire crackled warmly in the hearth. For the first time, he wondered if being chosen might not be the same as being saved. For the first time in his short life, Sam Hayes woke in a bed that felt like it had been made just for him. The sheets were soft, smelling faintly of lavender. Sunlight spilled through tall windows, turning the carved edges of the furniture golden. When he pushed himself upright, he saw the room for what it was. A child's dream carefully constructed. Shelves lined with books whose spines gleamed new. Toy soldiers arranged like an army awaiting command. A desk topped with pencils sharpened to perfect points. Sam rubbed his eyes, half afraid that when he blinked, it would vanish. But the room stayed. The warmth stayed. Downstairs, breakfast awaited. The dining hall was longer than the entire orphanage dormitory. Silver dishes gleamed in neat rows, and plates of food were set before him. Fluffy eggs, crisp bacon, toast spread with jam so thick it glistened like rubies. Sam stared in wonder, clutching the fork like a weapon he wasn't sure he was allowed to use. "Eat," Alexander Whitmore said from the head of the table. His tone was polite, but it carried the sharp edge of command. Sam obeyed. Each bite filled his stomach in a way he'd never known. He tried to eat slowly, afraid it might be taken away, but hunger got the better of him. When he looked up, Whitmore was watching, his smile calm, his eyes still cold. "You'll have this every day now," the man said. "A life of comfort. You are not one of those unfortunate children anymore." Sam nodded quickly, not trusting himself to speak. He thought of the orphanage's thin soups, of bread hard enough to crack teeth, and for a moment he felt dizzy with gratitude. The days that followed blurred into something almost unreal. Sam was shown the estate as though it belonged to him. The library with ceilings so high they disappeared into shadow, the gardens that bloomed in endless colors, the music room where a grand piano sat waiting for fingers that could play it. Servants hovered quietly, placing clothes in his drawers, shirts that fit too neatly, shoes that seemed to know the shape of his feet. For a boy who had spent his life in cast-offs and shared spaces, it was intoxicating. He ran down polished hallways, his laughter echoing, and for once he sounded like any other child. At night, he curled against the pillows, feeling full, warm, almost loved. But beneath the comfort, unease lingered. The staff rarely met his eyes. Their smiles were brief, gone as quickly as they appeared. Sam noticed how they stiffened whenever Whitmore entered the room, how their voices dropped, their movements sharpened. Gratitude warred with fear inside his chest, though he didn't yet understand why. One afternoon, while exploring, he wandered near the east wing. A hallway led to a locked door, heavy and reinforced, unlike the other delicate carvings of the mansion. Sam pressed his ear against it. On the other side, faint beeping, like machines breathing in rhythm, rose and fell. He pulled back quickly, his heart racing. That night, sleep was slow to come. The house was too big, too quiet, the silence pressing in on him. When he finally began to drift, the sound of footsteps stopped outside his door. He froze, every muscle tight. Through the narrow gap beneath the frame, he saw the cast of shadows. 2 people. Their voices were low, urgent. "Not yet," a woman whispered. Her voice trembled slightly, as though carrying both fear and warning. A man answered, words clipped. "The tests confirm it. He's a match." "We can't delay much longer. Her condition is worsening." Sam's stomach turned cold. He pressed his ear against the door, hardly breathing. "Mr. Whitmore insists we prepare," the man continued. "Everything must remain discreet. No mistakes." The woman hesitated. "But he's only a child." A pause. Then the man's voice hardened. "It isn't our place to question. Do what you're told." Their footsteps faded down the hall, leaving silence once again. Sam stayed there in the dark, heart pounding so loudly he was certain they would hear it. He pulled the blankets around himself, but no warmth reached him now. The toys on the shelves, the clothes in the drawers, the meals that had tasted like miracles, all of it shifted into something sinister. For the first time since leaving the orphanage, Sam felt the familiar weight of fear return. This mansion, with all its beauty, wasn't a dream after all. It was an illusion, and beneath it, something waited, watching. Morning light spilled through the tall windows of the Whitmore estate, casting golden patches across the marble floors. Sam Hayes padded softly down the corridor, the new shoes Whitmore had given him, squeaking faintly with each step. He carried a toy soldier in his pocket, twisting it between his fingers like a charm. The first days had been filled with wonder. Rooms he could explore, food he could never finish, books stacked in towers that begged to be opened. But wonder always gave way to curiosity. The mansion had corners that whispered secrets, doors that looked the same as any other, yet carried an aura of importance. Sam had counted at least 3 along the east wing, each one fitted with locks that seemed far too heavy for a simple household. That morning, he found himself standing before one of them. The door was plain oak, but the handle gleamed as if polished daily. His reflection wavered on its surface. He reached out and gripped it, expecting it to turn. It didn't. Sam frowned and tried again, pushing harder, his small hand slipping. Locked. He pressed his ear against the wood. The faintest sound met him, steady, mechanical, like the slow rhythm of a heartbeat made by machines. His stomach twisted. The hallway was empty. The servants, as always, moved elsewhere like ghosts, summoned only when needed. He bent lower, peering at the thin line of space beneath the door. Nothing but a strip of darkness. A shadow fell across the marble. Sam jerked back, his chest tight. A maid appeared from around the corner, carrying a tray of linens. She froze when she saw him near the door. Her face, usually expressionless, flickered with something sharp, fear, or maybe warning. "You shouldn't be here, young master," she said quickly, her voice low. "This wing is not for you." Sam swallowed, his throat dry. "Why is it locked?" Her eyes darted to the door, then back to him. "Some places in this house are private." "That is all you need to know." Before he could answer, she hurried past, her steps fast, the tray rattling in her hands. Sam stood there, staring after her. The toy soldier in his pocket felt heavier now, as though it had taken on the weight of his unease. Later that day, during one of his endless explorations, he found another door. This one was deeper in the west hall, its frame reinforced with iron bands. When he tried the handle, it didn't even move, sealed as though welded shut. A small brass plaque was affixed to the wall beside it, engraved with words too worn to read. Everywhere he turned, there were limits. Locked doors, silent staff, hallways that ended in shadows. The mansion was enormous, but Sam was beginning to realize it wasn't entirely his. He was free to roam, yes, but only in places they wanted him to see. That evening, Whitmore found him in the library, a book open on Sam's lap, though he hadn't turned a page in an hour. "You look thoughtful," Whitmore said, his voice smooth as silk. Sam hesitated. His tongue wanted to ask the question, but fear coiled around it. Still, the words escaped. "Why are some doors locked?" Whitmore's smile was immediate, practiced. "Every house has its secrets, Samuel. Some wings are old, unsafe, or simply not meant for wandering feet. You wouldn't want to hurt yourself, would you?" Sam shook his head quickly. "No, sir." Whitmore closed the book gently, his hand resting on Sam's shoulder. The weight of it was heavy, pressing. "Good boy. Remember, everything that matters is already yours. What's behind closed doors is not." Sam nodded, but the unease only deepened. That night, he lay awake in his great bed, the moonlight painting silver stripes across the sheets. He thought about the locked doors, about the steady mechanical hum he'd heard through the wood, about the maid's frightened eyes. And as the house settled into silence, Sam made a promise to himself. If the mansion was going to keep secrets, then he would learn them, no matter what waited behind those locked doors. The day of the introduction began like any other, at least on the surface. Sam had been given a schedule now, a carefully arranged routine that kept him occupied. Breakfast in the grand dining room, a morning spent with a private tutor, lunch by the garden terrace. But that afternoon, Whitmore's butler appeared in the library with a formality that made Sam's stomach tighten. "Young Master Samuel," the butler said, bowing slightly, "Mr. Whitmore requests that you meet his daughter." Sam blinked, closing the book he hadn't really been reading. He had glimpsed Evelyn once before, pale and silent on a balcony, her gaze lingering on him like frost. The memory of her eyes had stayed with him, uneasy and unshakable. Now, he was being led to her. The butler guided him through hallways he had never walked before. The air changed as they climbed a flight of stairs, cooler, tinged with the faint antiseptic smell Sam had noticed near the locked doors. His heart pounded harder the closer they drew. At last, they stopped outside a room. The door opened without a knock. Inside, the chamber was dim, heavy curtains drawn against the afternoon light. Machines hummed softly, their green and red lights blinking in steady rhythm. The smell of medicine filled the air. At the center of the room stood a large canopy bed, its posts carved with vines and flowers, though the beauty of it was overshadowed by the fragile figure lying beneath the sheets. Evelyn Whitmore. She was older than Sam, 15, maybe 16, but her body looked smaller, diminished by illness. Her skin was nearly translucent, stretched over delicate bones. Wires and tubes connected her to the machines, each pulse and breath measured, counted. A nurse stood close by, her eyes sharp and watchful. Whitmore himself was there too, seated beside the bed. He rose as Sam entered, a smile sliding easily into place. "Evelyn," he said softly, as if coaxing her to wake. "This is Samuel. He will be living with us now." Sam stepped forward, every nerve alive with discomfort. He didn't know where to look, at her, at the floor, at the strange machinery that seemed to fill the room with invisible weight. Evelyn turned her head slowly, her eyes opened, and in that moment, Sam felt something inside him tighten. Her gaze was not like her father's, cold, commanding, nor was it like the nurse's, professional, detached. Evelyn's eyes held something deeper, a sorrow that seemed too vast for her young face, and beneath it, something that startled him, an apology. She looked at him as if she already knew him, as if she regretted what his presence meant. Sam swallowed hard, forcing a small smile. "Hi," he whispered, his voice cracking. "I'm Sam." Her lips parted, but no words came. Instead, her eyes flickered, once to her father, once to the nurse, then back to Sam. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but Sam felt it like a message. "Be careful. I can't protect you." The nurse adjusted a tube at Evelyn's side. "That's enough for today," she said firmly, her tone carrying authority that even Whitmore didn't challenge. "She needs rest." Whitmore inclined his head. "Of course." He turned to Sam, resting a hand on his shoulder. "You'll have more time with your sister soon." Sister. The word struck him oddly. A sister was supposed to feel safe, familiar. This didn't. This felt like stepping into a dream where everything looked right, but felt wrong. As he was guided out, Sam glanced back one last time. Evelyn's eyes followed him to the door, wide and haunted. That look clung to him as the butler closed the door behind them. Back in his own room, Sam sat on the edge of his bed, staring at the floor. The toys and books around him felt different now. Props in a play he hadn't agreed to. Evelyn's eyes replayed in his mind, over and over. Warning, sorrow, apology. He pressed the toy soldier in his pocket until the edges bit into his palm. For the first time since arriving, he wished himself back at the orphanage, among peeling paint and cracked windows. At least there, he had known the rules. At least there, nothing was hidden behind soft smiles and locked doors. And yet, part of him clung to the memory of Evelyn's gaze. It was the first thing in the house that had felt real. The Whitmore mansion was never truly silent. By day, it was filled with footsteps on polished floors, the quiet rustle of maids, the hum of distant machinery hidden behind locked doors. But at night, when the chandeliers dimmed and the staff melted into shadows, Sam learned the house had a different voice. That night, he lay awake in his vast canopy bed, staring at the ceiling. The moonlight filtered in, silvering the edges of the curtains. He had tried to sleep, but Evelyn's eyes haunted him, the unspoken plea, the silent warning. It was impossible to forget. Then came the sound. At first, he thought it was only part of a dream, a faint beeping, steady and rhythmic, like a heartbeat measured by a machine. He sat up, straining to listen. The orphanage had been full of creaks and snores, but this sound didn't belong to an old house. It was clinical, mechanical. Sliding out of bed, Sam crept to the door and pressed his ear against it. More noises carried down the hall. The muffled scrape of wheels, the low thud of something heavy being set down. And beneath it all, a sound that froze him in place. A sob. Soft, muffled, almost smothered by walls, but undeniably human. Sam's heart hammered. He turned the handle and slipped into the corridor. The air was colder here, the marble under his bare feet chilling. He followed the noises, staying close to the shadows. Ahead, at the far end of the hallway, lantern light flickered. Two men pushed a cart stacked with wooden crates. The stenciled words on the side, medical equipment, fragile, glowed faintly in the lamplight. Sam crouched behind a pillar, watching. The men spoke in hushed tones. "Doctor wants these in the east wing before morning," one muttered. "And the boy?" the other asked. Sam held his breath. Not a word. Not yet. When the time comes, we'll know. Until then, he believes he's part of the family. The words stung like a slap. Not yet. Sam pressed himself tighter to the pillar as the men pushed the crates through one of the locked doors. He heard the click of keys, the groan of a lock turning. Then the door closed again, the corridor sinking back into silence. He stayed crouched for a long time, his knees aching, until the last echo of their footsteps died away. Only then did he creep back to his room, every shadow seeming sharper, every creak of the floorboards a threat. Inside, he shut the door quickly and leaned against it, his chest heaving. The toys on the shelves stared at him with glassy eyes. The clothes in the wardrobe hung neatly, like costumes waiting for an actor. For the first time, he realized how carefully everything had been arranged for him, how perfect the illusion had been. But perfection had cracks. He had heard them. He had seen them. Sam climbed back into bed, curling tight beneath the covers. His body trembled, though the room was warm. He told himself it was only his imagination, that the crates could have been anything, the sob only a trick of the wind. But deep inside, he knew. This house wasn't a home. It was something else entirely. And though he had been chosen, he was not free. He was caught, watched, kept, a son in name only, a prisoner in truth. The city always seemed lonelier at dawn. Streets slick with rain stretched empty. Neon signs flickered against gray skies, and the hum of traffic hadn't yet filled the air. For Detective Marcus Reed, mornings like this carried a particular weight. They reminded him of beginnings that felt like endings, hospital calls that came too late, cases where hope had already slipped through the cracks. Beside him, Ranger, his German shepherd, moved with steady confidence. The dog's breath puffed faintly in the chill air, ears pricked, eyes scanning, as if the world were always 1 second from danger. To Marcus, Ranger wasn't just a partner. He was the last constant in a life full of fractures. They were out near St. Vincent's Children's Hospital, one of 3 medical centers where children had been reported missing in the past 6 months. The cases had drawn whispers, but little progress. Each disappearance had the same pattern. An orphan or foster child, admitted for routine treatment, paperwork quietly misplaced, and then nothing. The trail went cold. Marcus crouched near a side entrance, running his hand over the concrete wall. "Third one this year," he muttered. Ranger sat at his side, alert, tail flicking once against the pavement. The detective's jaw tightened. Missing children cases were always the hardest. They tore at him in ways other crimes didn't. Perhaps because he had once been a child, waiting at a hospital bed too, watching helplessly as illness took someone he loved. His younger sister, Lily, had died before she ever reached her teens. That grief, raw and unsolvable, still lived in him like a scar that refused to fade. It was why he never walked away from cases like these, no matter how cold the trail seemed. "All right, boy," he said softly, scratching Ranger behind the ear. "Let's see if you can find what I can't." Ranger lowered his nose to the ground, sniffing carefully along the edges of the building. The leash pulled taut as the dog moved with purpose, weaving back and forth, nostrils flaring. Marcus followed, notebook tucked in his pocket, eyes scanning for anything unusual. Near the loading dock, Ranger stopped abruptly. His body stiffened, ears sharp, a low growl building in his chest. Marcus knelt, narrowing his gaze. The ground bore faint tracks, wheels, probably from a cart, cutting into the damp pavement. He traced the grooves with his fingers. They led toward the alley, then disappeared into the street. "You smell it, don't you?" Marcus asked quietly. Ranger barked once, sharp and certain. The detective's mind raced. Every lead he'd followed ended with locked files, missing signatures, hospitals claiming clerical errors. But Ranger wasn't bound by paperwork. The dog knew truth in scents, in invisible traces that lingered long after men thought they'd covered their crimes. "Good work, partner," Marcus said. He let Ranger guide him further down the alley, the dog's nose pressed low, tail rigid. They reached a dumpster behind the hospital. Ranger sniffed, growled, then pawed at something wedged near the corner. Marcus leaned closer, lifting a crumpled paper bag. Inside was a child's hospital bracelet. The plastic was bent, the ink faded, but the name was still clear. Daniel Cruz, age 9. Marcus exhaled sharply, closing his eyes. Daniel's file had crossed his desk 2 weeks earlier. A foster child admitted for pneumonia. transferred to another facility that never confirmed his arrival. Another name on the list of vanished. He slipped the bracelet into an evidence bag, his throat tightening. "We'll get them, Daniel," he murmured. "I promise." Ranger barked again, as if echoing the vow. Marcus stood, scanning the street. Somewhere out there, kids were being taken, hidden in plain sight, while the world looked the other way. He didn't know yet how deep it ran, or who had the power to cover such crimes. But he knew this much. Ranger had found a thread. And Marcus Reed never let go of a thread. As the morning traffic began to stir, the detective straightened his coat and gave Ranger a firm pat. "Come on, boy. Let's see where this trail takes us." They walked back toward the car, the city waking around them, unaware of the silent war being waged in its shadows. For Marcus, every case was personal. Every missing child a ghost he refused to add to the collection already haunting him. Ranger trotted at his side, head high, as if he too understood the weight of the hunt. Together, they stepped into the rising sun, chasing a truth that had waited too long in the dark. The city had shifted from dawn to late morning, but Marcus Reed's search hadn't paused. He moved with a quiet determination through the back alleys behind St. Jude's Children's Clinic, Ranger close at his side. The dog's nails clicked softly on the uneven pavement, his body poised, muscles coiled beneath his dark coat. The clinic itself was ordinary to the untrained eye. Peeling paint, a faded sign, the faint smell of disinfectant spilling into the street. But Marcus had learned long ago that predators hid behind the most ordinary facades. "All right, boy," Marcus murmured, giving Ranger the cue. "Let's see what they missed." Ranger lowered his head, nostrils flaring, inhaling deeply. He moved slowly at first, tail swishing in concentration, circling the alley like a compass finding north. Then, without warning, his entire body stiffened. His ears shot forward. His head snapped toward the far end of the alley. Marcus felt the leash jolt as Ranger surged forward. "Easy, partner," Marcus said, gripping the lead tighter. But Ranger was insistent, pulling with the urgency of a soldier who had caught the scent of the enemy. Marcus let him lead, trusting the dog's instincts more than any file or report. They crossed the alley, Ranger sniffing every crack in the pavement, every discarded box, every rusted dumpster. Then the shepherd froze again, paw raised, nose pressed against the faint scuff of a wheel track, cutting across the concrete. Marcus crouched, running his fingers along the faint groove, same as before, like a cart had been wheeled here, heavy with something it wasn't meant to carry. "Same pattern," Marcus muttered under his breath. "They're moving kids like cargo." Ranger whined low in his throat, pulling again, determined to follow. Marcus rose, his heart hammering. He let Ranger guide him through the maze of streets, across intersections, weaving between clusters of pedestrians. To onlookers, it might have looked like a man taking his dog for an urgent walk. But Marcus knew better. Ranger wasn't wandering. He was tracking. Block by block, the shepherd moved with growing certainty, as though the trail had been waiting for him all along. His pace quickened. Marcus matched it, scanning the surroundings with sharp eyes, memorizing every turn. Finally, Ranger stopped at the edge of a wide boulevard. The traffic roared past, horns blaring, engines snarling. But the dog wasn't distracted. His nose lifted, catching something carried on the wind. A scent invisible to Marcus, but undeniable to him. Then, without hesitation, Ranger pulled straight across. Marcus followed, dodging honking cars, trusting the leash that bound him to the dog more than the asphalt under his feet. On the far side, Ranger led him into a quieter district. Streets lined with old stone walls, ivy creeping along the edges. Marcus's breath slowed when he saw where the dog finally stopped. They stood at the edge of towering iron gates. Beyond them, nestled on the cliffs above the sea, rose the vast figure of the Whitmore estate. Ranger sat down, nose still twitching, tail low. His message was clear. The scent ended here. Marcus exhaled slowly, studying the mansion. He had read the name before. Alexander Whitmore, billionaire philanthropist, celebrated donor to hospitals and orphanages alike. A man so polished, so respected, he seemed untouchable. And yet here stood Ranger, his instincts pointing to this very place. The detective's jaw clenched. "Good work, boy," he whispered, kneeling to run a hand along Ranger's back. The shepherd's body remained tense, gaze fixed on the gates, as if he could see through the iron, past the manicured gardens, into the heart of the secrets within. Marcus pulled out his notebook, scribbling the time, the place, the details of the trail. He tucked the pen away and stood, eyes narrowing at the estate's looming silhouette. He didn't know yet what the connection was, why a string of missing children's scents led here, to a house guarded by wealth and status. But he trusted Ranger. Always had. Always would. And if the dog said the trail ended at the Whitmore mansion, Marcus knew this. The hunt had just found its target. Detective Marcus Reed sat alone at his desk in the precinct, the yellow glow of the desk lamp painting the room in weary shadows. The hum of the city outside pressed faintly through the window. But inside, silence held sway. Papers lay scattered in front of him. Case files, reports, photographs of children whose faces had slipped from the world without explanation. Beside the pile sat the hospital bracelet Ranger had uncovered earlier that week. Marcus's fingers brushed over it absent-mindedly, as though the thin strip of plastic could speak, if only he listened hard enough. He'd been a detective long enough to know that sometimes the truth didn't hide. It was simply buried under bureaucracy, beneath the weight of signatures and stamps meant to look official. So he dug where others hadn't, starting with adoption records. It took favors, late-night calls, and leaning on contacts in the family services department. But by midnight, a slim folder slid across his desk. Samuel Hayes. Marcus opened it carefully. The first thing he noticed was the smell. Fresh ink, fresh paper. Too fresh. Adoption records usually bore the signs of time. Smudges, photocopy lines, handwriting from caseworkers. But Sam's file looked rushed, printed in clean blocks, signatures that looked as though they'd been lifted from elsewhere. There were gaps, too. No background notes, no references from the orphanage. The timeline from placement to adoption was absurdly short. Days, not months. Marcus frowned, leaning back in his chair. "No one clears adoption this fast," he muttered. Not without someone pulling strings. Ranger, lying at his feet, lifted his head at the sound of his voice. The shepherd's dark eyes reflected the lamplight, steady and loyal. Marcus flipped another page. The name at the top made his gut tighten. Alexander Whitmore, listed as adoptive parent, with an address that matched the mansion where Ranger's trail had ended. He stared at it for a long time, his jaw tightening. Whitmore's public record was spotless. A billionaire philanthropist, known for his generosity to hospitals, clinics, orphanages. The kind of man who shook hands with mayors, who smiled for cameras at charity galas. On paper, he was untouchable. But Marcus had seen too many untouchables fall. The higher the pedestal, the darker the shadow underneath. He thought of Sam, an 11-year-old boy, plucked from obscurity, handed over with suspicious ease. His heart sank. He had no proof yet, only instincts sharpened by years of watching patterns. But his gut told him the boy wasn't safe. Marcus closed the file and rubbed a hand over his face. "Something's wrong here," he whispered. Ranger let out a low whine, as though in agreement. The detective stood and walked to the window. From his office, the city stretched wide and restless, lights blinking like stars against the night. Somewhere out there, in a mansion by the sea, a boy slept in a bed, too soft for the truth beneath it. Marcus's reflection stared back at him in the glass, lined with fatigue, eyes haunted by cases he couldn't let go. His sister's face flickered in his memory. He had been powerless to save her. But this time, with this boy, maybe he still had a chance. He turned back to his desk, snapping the folder shut. Tomorrow, he decided, he wouldn't knock on the gates of the Whitmore estate. He wouldn't demand answers and risk scaring them into hiding deeper. No, he would watch, quietly, patiently. Let Whitmore's empire believe it was invisible. Because Marcus Reed knew how to wait. And he wasn't alone. Ranger would be at his side, nose to the wind, ready to uncover what paper and signatures tried so desperately to hide. Marcus clipped the evidence bag with Daniel Cruz's bracelet to the board above his desk, pinning it beside the faces of the missing. His eyes lingered on Sam's name one last time. "Hold on, kid," he murmured into the quiet. "I'll find out what they're doing to you. I swear it." The clock ticked past 1 in the morning. Ranger lay down again, head resting on his paws, but his ears never fully relaxed. The hunt wasn't over. It had only just begun. The house was quieter than usual that afternoon. Rain pressed against the tall windows, streaking the glass with silver veins. Sam sat in the library with a book open across his knees, though he had read the same sentence half a dozen times without it sinking in. His thoughts kept circling back to Evelyn, the pale girl in the canopy bed, her gaze heavy with sorrow and warning. He hadn't seen her since their brief introduction. Every day he expected to be summoned again, but the summons never came. Instead, Whitmore kept him occupied with tutors, tours, endless dinners under chandeliers that glittered coldly above. It was a life of abundance, yet Sam felt the edges of it tightening around him like a noose. That day, when the butler finally appeared, Sam's chest tightened. "Your sister wishes to see you," the man said, voice neutral, but only for a short while. Sam followed him through corridors that grew colder the further they went, until they reached the east wing. The heavy door opened with a groan, and the smell of antiseptic rushed out. Inside, the room was dim once more, curtains drawn against the grey light. Machines whispered their steady rhythm, a metronome of fragility. Evelyn lay against her pillows, her skin pale as parchment, her hair spilling like dark water across the sheets. The nurse was absent, though Sam didn't know if that was by chance or intention. Her eyes opened when he stepped inside. "Sam," she whispered. Her voice was soft, barely audible above the hum of the machines, yet urgent in a way that made the hairs on his neck stand on end. He hesitated, then edged closer. "Hi," he said, almost shy. Her gaze flicked toward the door, then back to him. "Don't trust them." Sam froze. "What do you mean?" "Anyone," she said, her words slow, deliberate, as though each one cost her strength. "Not my father. Not the staff. No one." His heart thudded in his chest. "Why?" Her lips trembled. For a moment, she looked older than her years, worn by secrets too heavy for her frail body. Because you are not here for the reason you think, she whispered. Sam stepped closer, gripping the bed frame. Then why am I here? But Evelyn shook her head, her eyes darting again toward the door. I can't say. Not yet. If they knew I warned you. Her voice faltered, and she pressed a trembling hand against her chest, as though the weight of the truth might crush her. Sam's throat tightened. He wanted to press her, to demand answers, but something in her expression stopped him. There was a strange duality there, fear and sorrow intertwined. Her eyes seemed to plead with him, not just to understand, but to forgive. You don't want me here, do you? He asked quietly. Her eyes glistened. She didn't nod, didn't shake her head, only looked at him with such raw pain that it felt like a confession all on its own. Sam swallowed hard, stepping back. The warmth of the library, the meals, the toys, all of it seemed to fade as Evelyn's words wrapped around him like chains. Then what should I do? He whispered. Her answer was a single word, so faint it almost vanished into the hum of the machines. Survive. The door opened suddenly, and the nurse entered carrying a tray. She froze when she saw Sam standing close to the bed, her eyes narrowing with suspicion. That's enough for today, she said sharply. Miss Whitmore needs her rest. Sam nodded quickly and backed away, his heart hammering. Evelyn's gaze followed him until the door closed between them, her unspoken warning lingering in the dim corridor long after he had left. Back in his room, Sam sat on the edge of his bed, trembling. He replayed her words again and again. Don't trust them. Survive. For the first time since he'd arrived at the Whitmore estate, Sam wished he had never been chosen. Dinner at the Whitmore estate always felt like a performance. The dining hall stretched like a cathedral, chandeliers glowing above, the table polished so smooth it mirrored the candles. Staff drifted along the edges, silent and watchful, while Alexander Whitmore sat at the head of the table with his customary grace. Sam sat halfway down, in a chair that seemed too large for him. His plate overflowed with food. Roasted duck, vegetables arranged in careful symmetry, sauces glistening under the light. It looked perfect, smelled perfect, yet Sam chewed without tasting. Evelyn's words from earlier pressed against his ribs like a secret too sharp to swallow. Whitmore's eyes were on him. They were always on him, calculating, measuring, as though Sam were not a boy, but an equation to be solved. How are you adjusting, Samuel? Whitmore asked, his tone smooth, almost rehearsed. Sam nodded quickly. It's nice, sir. Very nice. He paused, gathering his courage, then blurted the question that had gnawed at him since the day he'd arrived. Do you know anything about my parents? The clink of silverware against porcelain echoed like a gunshot. Whitmore's smile faltered for the briefest of moments. Then it returned, polished but thinner, like glass over stone. Your parents, he repeated slowly, setting down his fork. Why do you ask about them? Sam's shoulders hunched. I never knew them. At the orphanage, they didn't tell me much. I thought maybe you would know something. His voice cracked. Since you chose me. The room seemed to hold its breath. Even the staff paused in their movements. Whitmore leaned back in his chair, fingers steepled beneath his chin. His eyes no longer carried warmth. They were cold, hard, a reminder of the man beneath the charm. Listen carefully, Samuel, he said at last. His voice had sharpened, stripped of softness. The past is irrelevant. Your parents, whoever they were, could not give you what you needed. That is why you were discarded. Sam's chest tightened as though the words had reached in and gripped his heart. Whitmore continued, each word deliberate. I am the one who saved you from that life. I am the one who gave you a name worth carrying, a home worth living in. Whatever affection you seek from ghosts, you will not find it. You belong to me now, and that should be enough." Sam stared at his plate, his cheeks burning. The duck had gone cold, the sauce congealing, but he couldn't move his fork. He felt small again, smaller than he had in the orphanage, swallowed whole by the enormity of Whitmore's gaze. The billionaire's smile returned, brittle, rehearsed. He reached across the table, his hand resting briefly on Sam's shoulder. The weight of it was heavy, pressing down instead of comforting. "You must learn gratitude, Samuel. It is all that is asked of you." Sam forced a nod. "Yes, sir." His voice was barely a whisper. Whitmore withdrew his hand and returned to his meal, conversation shifting to business matters with one of his aides who had entered the room. To anyone watching, it might have seemed like a normal dinner in a wealthy home, but to Sam, the illusion had cracked beyond repair. He realized then that Whitmore's affection was nothing more than a mask. The smiles, the promises, the polished words, all of it was rehearsed, performed, like lines spoken in a play. Beneath it was something colder, harder. There was no love here, only ownership. Later, when Sam lay in bed, the chandelier's glow still burned in his memory. His chest ached with a longing he couldn't name, for parents he had never known, for affection that wasn't bought, for a voice that soothed instead of cut. He clutched the toy soldier in his hand until the edges dug into his palm, whispering a truth he could no longer ignore. In the Whitmore estate, he was not a son. He was something else entirely. The storm outside had carried on into the night. Wind howled against the windows of the Whitmore estate, rattling the glass panes in their frames. Thunder rolled across the sea cliffs, shaking the very walls of the house. Most of the staff had retreated to their quarters, their duties done for the evening. Whitmore was away in a late meeting, and Evelyn remained confined to her room. Sam should have been in bed. Instead, he wandered the silent halls with a nervous energy he couldn't contain. Evelyn's whispered warning replayed in his mind. "Don't trust them. Survive." The words had planted themselves like thorns. They made him notice things he had ignored before, the way servants avoided his gaze, the way Whitmore's smile never touched his eyes, the way locked doors seemed to pulse with secrets. Tonight, the secrets felt closer than ever. As he passed the second-floor gallery, a shaft of light caught his attention. A door, usually kept shut, had been left ajar. Beyond it lay Whitmore's private study. Sam hesitated, his chest tightened as though something unseen tried to pull him back. But curiosity was stronger, and fear often sharpened it. He slipped inside. The study was vast, lined with shelves that sagged under the weight of leather-bound books. A globe stood in the corner, maps pinned to the walls. But what drew Sam's attention was the desk in the center of the room, broad, imposing, its surface buried under papers. He approached slowly, the thunder outside muffling the sound of his steps. His fingers brushed over neat stacks of documents, business reports, ledgers. Nothing unusual, but then his eyes caught on a folder shoved half beneath a pile. Its edge bore his own name, written in black ink. Samuel Hayes. His pulse quickened. He pulled the folder free, his hands trembling. Inside were pages of medical charts. His name appeared again and again, alongside strings of numbers and clinical terms he didn't understand. But one word leapt out, circled in heavy red ink across the top page. Donor. Sam's breath hitched. He flipped through the pages, his eyes darting over phrases. Blood compatibility confirmed. Cardiac tissue match. Emergency viability window. Each note was colder than the last, as if he weren't a boy but a specimen. The thunder cracked, shaking the room, but it was nothing compared to the quake inside his chest. He shoved the papers back into the folder, but his eyes couldn't stop scanning. Another sheet bore Evelyn's name. The charts overlapped. Her failing heart, her narrowing timeline, her desperate need. The connections snapped into place with brutal clarity. You are not here for for the reason you think." Evelyn's warning slammed into him with new meaning. He staggered back from the desk, folder clutched to his chest, his breaths shallow. His legs shook so violently he nearly stumbled against the chair. The word glared up at him from the page still in his hand. "Donor." Sam dropped it, as though it burned. He looked around the study, suddenly aware of how small he was, how easily this room could swallow him whole. The storm outside wailed against the windows, but it was nothing compared to the storm in his heart. He wasn't a son, wasn't even a boy to them. He was a solution, a replacement part, a sacrifice. His throat closed, his eyes stinging. He wanted to run, to scream, but the house was too big, too full of locked doors and watchful eyes. Instead, he backed into the shadows, forcing himself to calm, to breathe, to think. He stuffed the file back beneath the stack exactly as he had found it, every movement frantic but careful. If Whitmore discovered, he had seen it. The thought made his stomach twist. Sam slipped from the study into the hallway. The darkness seemed thicker now, every portrait on the walls glaring down at him with painted judgment. His bare feet slapped lightly against the cold marble as he hurried back to his room. Once inside, he locked the door, something he had never dared before. He pressed his back against it, heart racing, lungs aching for air. He felt caged in his own chamber, surrounded by toys and comforts that now seemed like bars of gold around a prison cell. Curling into the corner of his bed, Sam whispered into the storm outside, his voice trembling. "I'm not safe here." The word donor echoed in his mind, over and over, louder than the thunder. And for the first time, Sam truly understood. He wasn't chosen. He was marked. The storm had eased into a restless drizzle by the time Sam finally drifted into sleep. His small body trembled under the weight of exhaustion, his mind still reeling from the sight of that word, scrawled in red ink. Donor. The echo of it throbbed like a drumbeat in his skull, but sleep did not bring peace. He dreamt of machines humming in rhythm with his own heart, of faceless doctors leaning over him with knives that glinted like lightning. He tossed and turned, fighting invisible hands, until he realized, through the haze of half-dream, that the hands were real. Cold fingers gripped his wrists. A sharp sting pressed into the crook of his arm. Sam's eyes snapped open. Two nurses in white uniforms loomed over him, their faces pale and expressionless. One held a syringe, its needle glinting in the dim light. The other pressed him down against the mattress, her weight pinning him like a trapped animal. "Hold still," one hissed, voice clipped and urgent. "No!" Sam screamed, thrashing with all the strength his small frame could muster. Panic surged like fire through his veins, burning away his fear. He kicked wildly, his heel catching the tray they had brought with them. It clattered to the floor, instruments scattering across the marble with a shriek of metal. "Sedate him!" the other nurse barked, struggling to hold his arm steady. Sam bit down on her wrist. The taste of salt and copper filled his mouth as she yelped, jerking back. The syringe slipped from her grasp, bouncing harmlessly onto the floor. Adrenaline roared in his ears. He shoved against them, twisting free of their grip, his heart hammering so violently it seemed it might burst. His bare feet hit the cold floor, and he bolted for the door. One nurse lunged, fingers brushing the fabric of his shirt. But Sam ducked low, slipping from her grasp. The world blurred as he ran, the corridors stretching long and dark around him. "Get him!" someone shouted behind him. Sam sprinted, his breath ragged, his legs trembling but unyielding. His mind flashed back to Evelyn's whispered warning, "Survive." The house was a maze, but terror guided him. He darted down side halls, heart slamming against his ribs, his small hands skimming the walls for balance. His shadow flickered in the glow of lanterns, stretching thin and frantic. Behind him, footsteps thundered. The nurses weren't alone now. He heard the deeper voices of men, guards perhaps, or staff called to contain him. The sound of pursuit spurred him faster. He rounded a corner and collided with a table. Pain shot through his hip as he crashed into it, sending a vase shattering to the floor. He stumbled but didn't stop, blood pounding in his ears. Every door he tried was locked. Every hallway funneled him deeper into the mansion's belly. He was trapped in a house too large, too guarded, too prepared. But still, he ran. He reached a long corridor lined with windows. The storm outside had left the glass streaked with rain, the gardens beyond dark and endless. For a wild moment, he thought of smashing through, of throwing himself into the wet night. Better broken bones than what awaited him on the other side of a needle. A shout echoed closer. He turned instead, darting into a narrow servant's stairwell. The steps creaked beneath his weight as he scrambled down, nearly tripping in his haste. At the bottom, he pressed himself into the shadows, gulping air, trembling so violently his teeth chattered. He clutched the railing as if it might hold him steady against the tide of terror. Above, footsteps thundered past, the search spilling into other wings of the house. Voices barked orders. The faint metallic clink of instruments being gathered reminded him of the syringe, the sting he had felt before waking fully. They had tried to take him, not because he was a son, not because he was wanted, but because of what lay beating inside his chest. Sam pressed a hand to his heart, feeling its frantic rhythm beneath his palm. It was the sound of his life, of his terror, of his will to fight. They would not take it without him tearing the world apart first. Tears blurred his vision, but he swallowed them down. Evelyn had warned him. He hadn't wanted to believe it, but now the truth was written in bruises on his arms and the echo of the word that still burned in his mind. Donor. He crouched in the dark, waiting, listening. Every creak of the house felt like a threat, every whisper of wind against the windows like a breath on his neck. He was no longer fooled by fine meals or soft clothes. The illusion had shattered. This house wasn't a home, it was a trap. And now, Sam knew, the clock was ticking. The night had deepened into a restless silence when Detective Marcus Reed pulled his unmarked sedan to a quiet stop along the cliff road. From there, the Whitmore estate loomed like a fortress above the sea, its windows glowing faintly in the dark. Marcus sat for a moment, fingers drumming the steering wheel, eyes narrowing at the sight of the mansion. His gut had been gnawing at him all week, the trail of missing children ending here, at this place that reeked of power and secrets. Beside him, Ranger shifted in the passenger seat, ears twitching. The shepherd's nose lifted toward the night air, a low growl rising in his throat. Marcus glanced at him. "You smell something, don't you, boy?" The growl deepened, more insistent now. Ranger's hackles lifted, his whole body tense, ready. Then, without warning, he lunged toward the door, pawing at it, barking sharp and loud. Marcus's pulse spiked. He knew Ranger well enough to understand. This wasn't restlessness. This was an alarm. Urgency. Danger. "Easy," Marcus said, though his own voice betrayed the quickening beat of his heart. He stepped out into the chill night, leash clipped to Ranger's collar, just as the dog surged forward. The shepherd pulled with all his strength, dragging Marcus across the gravel shoulder toward the iron gates of the estate. His claws scraped sparks against the stone as he fought to get closer, barking ferociously now, the sound echoing against the cliffs. Marcus strained to hold him. "Ranger, heel!" But Ranger refused. His teeth bared, his paws dug furrows into the ground, and his deep growls rolled like thunder. He wasn't just barking at shadows. He was warning of something real, something happening on the other side of those gates. Marcus's eyes lifted. Through the trees, he saw flickers of movement in the mansion windows, a shadow darting across a hallway, another, heavier, dragging something, or someone. Then came the faint sound carried on the wind, a cry, high-pitched, muffled, a child. Marcus's blood went cold. Inside, chaos was unfolding. Ranger hurled himself against the iron bars, the clang reverberating through the night. He snapped at the gaps, furious, unstoppable, as if sheer willpower might bend the metal apart. His barking cut through the stillness, sharp enough to wake the seabirds nesting along the cliff. Marcus grabbed the bars, shaking them, his jaw tight. "What the hell are you doing in there, Whitmore?" he muttered under his breath. Inside the grounds, lights flared. Security shadows moved quickly, their silhouettes crossing the glass. One of them paused at a window, startled by the sound of Ranger's relentless fury. The shepherd reared up, claws scraping the gate, eyes blazing. To anyone watching, it wasn't just a dog's alarm. It was defiance, an animal refusing to let injustice pass unchallenged. Marcus felt it in his chest like a mirror of his own rage. He crouched, gripping Ranger's collar, forcing the dog's eyes to meet his. "Show me, boy," he whispered. "What do you know?" Ranger whined, his gaze flicking from Marcus back to the mansion, as if begging him to understand. Then another sound pierced the night, faint but distinct. The screech of metal against marble, the crash of something overturned. And again, that cry. Desperate, terrified. Marcus's hand tightened on the bars until his knuckles whitened. The evidence he'd searched for, the suspicion he'd carried, it wasn't just paper and ink anymore. It was happening right there, in real time. "Hold on, kid," he muttered into the dark. Ranger barked again, furious and unrelenting. His body strained so hard against the leash that Marcus had to brace himself with both feet. Inside the estate, the commotion grew louder. Lights flickered from one wing to another. Marcus could almost map it. The chase, the struggle, the desperate flight of a child who knew too much. Ranger's bark rose higher, more urgent, as though he could feel the boy's terror pulsing from within those walls. Marcus straightened, his decision already made. Surveillance could wait. Warrants could wait. Whatever was happening inside couldn't. "All right, partner," he said, unclipping the leash. "We're in this now." Ranger dropped to the ground like a soldier awaiting orders, but his body trembled with readiness, eyes fixed on the mansion. Marcus's hand brushed the holster at his side, his jaw set. He didn't know yet how he'd breach the gates, how he'd face the power Whitmore wielded, but he knew this much. Ranger had never been wrong before. And tonight the dog's fury wasn't just instinct. It was a prophecy. The storm had returned in full force. Rain lashed the stone walls of the Whitmore estate, drumming against the windows, spilling in torrents down the gutters. Lightning carved jagged scars across the sky, and thunder rolled heavy and endless over the sea. Sam burst through the side door of the mansion, his bare feet splashing into the cold night. His breath came in ragged gasps, his small frame shuddering with terror. Behind him, voices shouted, boots pounded, the hunt already underway. "Stop him!" one guard bellowed, his words nearly drowned in the storm. Sam didn't look back. His heart slammed in his chest, his legs pumping with every ounce of desperation he had left. The rain plastered his hair to his face, blurred his vision, but he kept running, through gardens that seemed endless, past statues that loomed like silent witnesses. The gravel tore at his feet, but pain didn't matter. Only distance did. Another shout. Flashlights cut through the dark, beams darting like predators' eyes. Sam stumbled, nearly falling into the mud, but adrenaline kept him moving. Evelyn's voice pulsed in his head. Survive. A figure lunged from the shadows. A guard. His hand shot out, fingers brushing Sam's arm. And then the night exploded in a snarl. Out of the storm charged Ranger, his massive body colliding with the man. The shepherd's teeth sank into the guard's sleeve, dragging him to the ground with a force that knocked the breath from his lungs. The man shouted, cursing, trying to pry free, but Ranger's growls rumbled like thunder, unrelenting. Go! Marcus's voice cut through the storm, somewhere close, urgent and commanding. Run, kid. Sam froze for half a heartbeat, disbelief flooding him. The dog, the detective, they were here. They had found him. Ranger released the guard with a final snap of his jaws and bounded to Sam's side, pressing close, his body a wall of muscle and fur. His eyes burned with a fierce intelligence, as if telling the boy, "Stay with me. You're not alone anymore." Another guard appeared, flashlight beam slicing across the rain. Ranger lunged, barking with such ferocity that the man stumbled back, tripping over the slick stones. Sam seized the moment and sprinted again, Ranger darting ahead, guiding him like a beacon through the storm. The gates loomed in the distance, black iron slick with rain. Between Sam and freedom, more shadows moved. Whitmore's men, closing in fast. Sam's lungs screamed for air. His legs burned. He thought he might collapse before he reached the gates. But then, Ranger slowed, circling him, barking, snapping at the heels of anyone who dared come close. And the shepherd became both shield and sword, his presence pushing Sam forward. A hand clamped down on Sam's shoulder from behind. He screamed, but Ranger was faster. With a roar, the dog leapt, knocking the man off his feet. The crunch of bone, the shout of pain, the growl of victory, all of it blurred in Sam's ears as he staggered toward the gates. And then, through the curtain of rain, a figure appeared beyond the iron bars. A man, tall and steady, coat drenched, face grim beneath the lightning. Marcus Reed. His eyes locked on Sam's. Even in the storm, even in the chaos, the detective's gaze was steady, anchoring. "Come on, kid," Marcus shouted, his voice carrying over the thunder. Ranger bounded ahead, claws scraping against the iron, barking wildly. Sam stumbled the last few feet, his hands slapping against the bars. Marcus reached through, gripping his wrist with a strength that nearly lifted him off the ground. For a moment, time froze. Sam clinging to the bars, Marcus pulling from the other side, Ranger snarling at the guards closing in. The storm raged around them, but in that moment, Sam felt something he hadn't felt in years. Hope. "Don't let go," Marcus roared. "I won't," Sam cried, his voice breaking. Ranger spun, teeth bared, buying them precious seconds as the guards hesitated under his fury. And then, with one final heave, Marcus wrenched Sam through the narrow opening where the gate met the wall. The boy tumbled into his arms, drenched, trembling, but alive. Marcus wrapped his coat around him, holding him close. "You're safe now, kid. I've got you." Ranger trotted through the gap next, shaking water from his coat, positioning himself between Marcus, the boy, and the men who still shouted from inside. His growls were low, constant, a warning carved into the storm itself. Marcus met Whitmore's guards with eyes like steel. "Tell your boss," he said, voice cutting through the rain. "This boy is mine now, and you'll answer for what you tried to do." The gates clanged shut, sealing Whitmore's men inside. The storm howled around them, but for Sam, The world had narrowed to one truth. He wasn't running alone anymore. He had been found, and for the first time since the nightmare began, survival felt possible. The drive from the Whitmore estate felt longer than it was. Rain lashed the windshield in silver sheets, wipers groaning with each swipe. Marcus kept one hand steady on the wheel, the other hovering near the dash, his eyes darting between the road ahead and the rear-view mirror. Every pair of headlights in the distance made his pulse quicken. In the passenger seat, Sam sat curled in Marcus's coat, soaked hair dripping into the fabric. His face was pale, blotched with tears that had not fully dried. He trembled, not from the cold alone, but from fear that still hadn't loosened its grip. At his feet, Ranger pressed close, his thick coat radiating warmth. The shepherd's head rested on Sam's knee, golden eyes fixed protectively on the boy. Every few minutes, he gave a soft whine, nudging Sam's arm until the boy's fingers sank into his fur. "You're safe now," Marcus said quietly, eyes still on the road. "Nobody's gonna hurt you. Not while I'm here. Not while he's here." Sam swallowed hard, nodding, though his grip on Ranger only tightened. The car filled with silence, just the storm, the hum of the engine, Ranger's steady breath. Marcus didn't push. Fear had its own language, and sometimes silence spoke it better than words. Finally, Sam whispered, voice shaking. "They tried to make me sleep with a needle." Marcus's jaw clenched, rage coiling in his chest. He forced calm into his tone. "And you fought back. That took guts." The boy's eyes flicked toward him, uncertain. "I was so scared." "You should have been," Marcus said softly. "Fear means you knew what was at stake, and you survived. That's strength." Sam pressed his face into Ranger's wet fur, whispering something Marcus couldn't hear, fragments of relief spilling out at last. By the time Marcus turned down a quiet side street, the storm had eased to a steady drizzle. His apartment wasn't much. 2 bedrooms, worn furniture, the faint smell of coffee lingering in the walls. But it was safe. "Come on," Marcus said gently as he parked. "Let's get you inside. Get you warm." Sam hesitated, stiff with the expectation of danger. But when Ranger leapt out first, shook the rain from his coat, and stood waiting by the door, the boy followed. Inside, lamplight filled the space in soft gold. It wasn't grand. It wasn't marble halls echoing with secrets. It was lived in, real. Marcus draped a blanket around Sam's shoulders and guided him to the couch. Ranger hopped up beside him without hesitation, sprawling half across his lap. A startled laugh broke from Sam, quiet, shaky, but real. He buried his face in the shepherd's fur. Marcus rubbed Ranger's head. "Good boy," he murmured. Then he crouched in front of Sam. "Listen to me," he said firmly. "Whatever they told you in that house, it doesn't matter. You're not a donor. You're not property. You're a kid. And you deserve to live." Tears welled and spilled before Sam could stop them. "But what if they come for me? Then they'll have to go through me," Marcus said. He nodded at Ranger. "Through us." The shepherd's ears pricked, as if accepting the challenge. Sam's hand crept toward Marcus's, small fingers gripping tightly. His voice broke. "Please, don't let them take me back." Marcus held his gaze. "I won't. That's a vow." For a moment, Sam searched his face, looking for cracks, for another mask like Whitmore's. Instead, he found truth, steady, immovable. Sam exhaled, shuddering, and leaned into Ranger. The shepherd licked his cheek once, then settled again. Eyes half closed, but alert, guarding even in rest. Later, with the storm tapering to distant thunder, Marcus set a mug of hot cocoa in front of the boy. Sam cupped it with trembling hands, steam fogging his glasses. He hadn't spoken since, but Marcus waited. Finally, Sam's whisper cut the quiet. They said I was a match. For her. Evelyn. His voice cracked. Not because he wanted me. Because of my heart. Marcus lowered himself onto the opposite chair. Sam, he said gently, tell me everything, from the start. And Sam did, haltingly at first. Fragments of overheard whispers, the sound of doors locking, medical crates wheeled in at night. Then bolder, the folder with his name, the word written in red so large it burned into memory. Donor. Evelyn's whispered warning. Survive. By the time he finished, his chest was heaving, his knuckles white around the mug. His jaw trembled with the effort to hold back tears. Marcus reached into his jacket, pulled out a small recorder, and clicked it on. Samuel Hayes, he said, voice low, deliberate. Tell me again. Every detail. Sam blinked. You believe me? Marcus's eyes softened. I've believed you since I saw you at that gate. But now the world has to. Ranger shifted closer, his steady presence grounding the boy. Sam retold everything, his voice shaky but firming with each word. Marcus wrote notes even as the tape rolled, his face grim, absorbing every fragment. When Sam finished, silence pressed in again. Outside, rain pattered against the windows, soft and steady. Marcus shut off the recorder, exhaling hard. Jesus. The horror coiled through him. A man celebrated as a humanitarian had adopted an 11-year-old boy, not for love, but for harvest. He leaned forward. You did the right thing, Sam. Now we have what we need to stop him. Sam's eyes widened. But what if they find me? Then they'll find me standing between you and them, and him. Marcus nodded at Ranger. The shepherd lifted his head, nudging Sam's arm. The boy's trembling eased. Later, Marcus showed him the small bedroom down the hall. The quilt was faded, the bed narrow, but it was his. There were no locks on the door, no shadows waiting. Sam ran his fingers across the quilt, grounding himself in the texture. Ranger leapt onto the bed, circling once before settling with his head across the boy's legs. Sam sat down, burying his hand in the shepherd's fur. The dog's steady breathing filled the room like a lullaby. That night Marcus cooked pasta, simple, hearty, nothing like the sterile meals of Whitmore's estate. Sam ate slowly, still half expecting the plate to vanish, but Marcus only nodded. Eat, kid. You need strength. Sam finished every bite. Warmth bloomed in his stomach. For the first time in weeks, maybe months, he felt full without fear. When Marcus came to check on him later, Sam was curled under the quilt. Ranger stretched beside him, eyes half-lidded but watchful. The boy stirred. You won't let them take me? Marcus tucked the blanket tighter. No, Sam. You're safe here. The boy nodded, drifting toward sleep, his hand still gripping the shepherd's fur. Ranger's tail thumped once in the dark, slow and steady. Marcus didn't sleep. At the kitchen table, he spread files across the wood, pinning new notes to the corkboard on the wall. At the center, he placed a sheet with Sam's name. Samuel Hayes, donor match for Evelyn Whitmore. He pinned the boy's words beside hospital ledgers, forged signatures, financial transfers. One more thread in a web that darkened by the hour. He glanced toward the hallway. From Sam's room came the sound of soft breathing, punctuated by Ranger's occasional huff. Fragile, imperfect, but safe. For now. Marcus pressed his pen to paper, jaw tight. Tomorrow, we fight back. Outside, the storm had finally passed. In the stillness of the night, the boy, marked for sacrifice, slept at last without fear, protected by a detective's vow, a dog's loyalty, and the fragile beginnings of hope. When it was time for bed, Marcus tucked an extra blanket around him. "You're safe here," he said simply. "Get some rest." Sam nodded, though he didn't quite believe it yet. He lay down, Ranger pressed against his side, the quilt pulled to his chin. The apartment's hum surrounded him, distant traffic, the creak of pipes, the faint ticking of a clock. It was ordinary, comforting. But when sleep came, it brought no peace. In his dreams, he was back in the mansion. The corridors stretched forever, locked doors lining the walls, each one whispering his name. He ran, but the walls closed in, and behind every door came the hum of machines, the beeping rhythm of a heart that wasn't his. He saw Evelyn, her pale face framed by dark hair, her eyes glistening with sorrow. She reached for him, lips forming words he couldn't hear, but her gaze pierced him with the weight of her unspoken plea. Then came the folder. His name, the red scrawl of donor across the page. He woke with a cry, sitting upright, his chest heaving, sweat slicking his skin. Ranger was already there, pressing close, his nose nudging Sam's arm, a soft whine vibrating in his throat. The dog's presence steadied him, but Sam's hands still trembled. He pressed his face into Ranger's fur, muffling his sobs. A moment later, Marcus appeared at the doorway, his figure framed in the soft glow of the hall light. He didn't rush in, didn't smother the boy with questions. He simply stood there, his voice quiet, but steady. "Nightmare?" Sam nodded wordlessly, clutching Ranger tighter. Marcus stepped inside, kneeling by the bed. "They don't get to own your nights too, Sam," he said softly. "You're safe here. Remember that." Sam's throat tightened. "But I still see her," he whispered. "Evelyn." She looked so sad, like she wanted to tell me more, but she couldn't. Marcus laid a steady hand on his shoulder. "Then maybe she's not the enemy. Maybe she's a victim too. But we'll get to that in time. For now, focus on you. On breathing. On resting. That's how you fight back." Sam nodded again, tears slipping down his cheeks. He leaned into Marcus's touch, surprised by how steady and unforced it felt, so different from Whitmore's cold grip. Marcus stayed there until Sam's breathing slowed, until the boy's small body finally eased back into the mattress. Ranger didn't move from his side, eyes half open, watching the room with the vigilance of a soldier. When Marcus rose to leave, Sam's voice broke the quiet. "You promise they won't take me back?" Marcus turned, his expression solemn, his answer carved with conviction. "I promise." Sam closed his eyes again, clutching Ranger like a lifeline. Sleep returned, lighter this time, less haunted. Marcus lingered in the doorway, watching them both, the boy and the dog, two souls scarred by the cruelty of others, clinging to each other in a fragile refuge. He knew the fight ahead would be brutal, but in that moment, he felt something stir inside him that had long been buried. Hope. The morning after Sam's first night in Marcus's apartment was heavy with grey clouds, the air still damp from the storm. Marcus sat at his cluttered desk, a mug of coffee cooling by his hand, while Sam and Ranger remained curled together on the couch. The boy twitched now and then in his sleep, but at least he was resting. Marcus's eyes stayed fixed on the files. Forged adoption papers. Medical charts Sam had described with frightening precision. The pieces didn't add up, unless someone powerful had forced them into place. He scrolled through his contacts, stopping at one name. Dr. Karen Ellison, a senior physician at St. Vincent's. Years ago, his testimony had saved her career. She owed him. She answered on the second ring. Marcus? It's been a while. Too long. I need your help. Off the record. A pause, then a sigh. This about the kids? His silence was enough. Meet me in an hour, she said. Usual place. The cafe was small, tucked between brick buildings on a quiet street. Marcus chose the back booth, where he could see both exits. Ranger lay at his feet, calm but alert. Dr. Ellison slipped in, her coat buttoned high, eyes scanning the room. You look like hell, she murmured. Feels mutual, Marcus said. He slid Sam's adoption file across the table. 11 years old. Paperwork cleared in under a week. No background checks. No evaluations. Just rubber stamps and forged signatures. Her brow furrowed. Impossible. Adoptions take months, sometimes longer. Not if someone's paying. Her eyes flicked up, voice dropping. Whitmore. Marcus didn't answer, but silence was enough. She rubbed her temples. I've seen the money flow, grants, endowments, research donations, all tied back to his foundations. No one asks questions when it keeps the lights on. He's buying access, Marcus, influence. Cases vanish off the books. Families silenced. Files deleted. I've tried raising alarms, but every time I do, doors close. Marcus leaned forward. What's he buying with it? Her voice trembled. Children. Transfers that never reach their destinations. Confidential flags on charts. And donors. Marcus slid another page across the table. A single word circled in red. Donor. Dr. Ellison's face paled. Dear God. Tell me I'm wrong, Marcus said flatly. He adopted that boy as a living organ bank for his daughter. Her silence stretched too long. Finally, she whispered, You're not. The confirmation hit Marcus like a hammer. He had suspected. Now he knew. Karen, he said, sharper now. I need records, transfers, payouts, anything tying Whitmore's money to the disappearances. Without it, I've got nothing but a child's word, and you know how the courts treat that against a billionaire's smile. Fear flickered in her eyes. Then she nodded. I'll see what I can do, quietly. But if they find out, then we both become targets, Marcus finished. But I won't stop. Ranger let out a low growl beneath the table, as if sensing the weight of her warning. Just be careful, Dr. Ellison whispered. Whitmore isn't a man who forgives curiosity. Marcus gave a humorless smile. Good thing I'm not asking for forgiveness. Back at the apartment, Marcus found Sam awake on the couch, Ranger sprawled protectively across his lap. Did you find anything? The boy asked, voice trembling. Marcus crouched down. You were right, Sam, about all of it, and I'm going to prove it. Relief and fear flickered across the boy's face. He clutched Ranger tighter, burying his face in the shepherd's fur. Marcus pinned new notes to his evidence board, each string another nail in Whitmore's spotless reputation. He whispered to himself, You think money makes you untouchable, Whitmore. But we're coming. A knock broke the silence. 3 short raps, followed by stillness. Marcus's hand brushed the grip of his pistol as he cracked the door. No one was outside. Only traffic below. But on the floor lay a cream envelope, edges damp from mist, his name written in slanted, delicate handwriting. Inside was a single sheet. Detective Reed, you don't know me, but I know what you're searching for. My name is Evelyn Whitmore. My father intends to take Samuel's heart to replace my own. This is not rumor. It is fact. I have seen the charts, heard the doctors, read the plans. He will not stop. Protect the boy. Do not trust anyone tied to my family. They will lie. They will kill. All I can give you is this. Samuel's life depends on you. Please don't fail him." Marcus's stomach clenched. Evelyn Whitmore, frail, imprisoned by her illness, had risked everything to send this. Sam read it silently, hands shaking. When he finished, tears welled in his eyes. She knew, all along. "She saved me," he whispered, clutching the letter. "She didn't have to, but she did." Marcus placed a steady hand on his shoulder. "It's not just your word anymore, Sam. It's hers too. The daughter of the man himself." Sam's voice cracked. "But if she told you, won't he hurt her?" Marcus swallowed hard. That fear already burned in him. Evelyn was a prisoner in her father's house, and betrayal carried a price. He locked the letter away, clicking his recorder on. Received written testimony from Evelyn Whitmore confirming Alexander Whitmore's intent. This is now primary evidence. He clicked it off. "We're not just dealing with corruption anymore, Sam. This is a conspiracy. And now we've got proof from inside his own house." Sam whispered. "Will it be enough?" "Not yet," Marcus admitted. "But beginnings are all you need to bring down a giant," Ranger growled softly, as if echoing the vow. Night fell heavy. Fog clung to the streets outside, muffling traffic and dimming the glow of lamps. Inside, Sam finally drifted to sleep, his hand resting in Ranger's fur. Marcus scribbled notes at the table, unease coiling in his gut. Men like Whitmore didn't wait patiently for evidence to pile up. They struck first. A sound cut through the stillness, soft, deliberate. Ranger's ears twitched, his body stiffened, a growl rumbling deep. Marcus rose, pistol in hand. He eased the curtain back. A dark van idled across the street, headlights off, figures shifted in the fog. "They've found us," Marcus muttered. Sam stirred, blinking in confusion. Marcus crouched beside him. "Kid, listen. You've got to wake up. Now." Whitmore's men are outside. Fear widened the boy's eyes. He clutched Ranger. "They found us?" "Yes," Marcus said firmly, "but they're not taking you." "Not tonight. Not ever." A pounding knock shook the door. A voice called, smooth but mocking. "Detective Reed, hand the boy over and no one gets hurt." Ranger's snarl ripped through the room. "Not happening," Marcus muttered. Another knock, louder. "You can't fight Whitmore. Give us the boy and walk away clean." Marcus leaned close to Sam. "We're leaving through the back. Stay with Ranger. Do what he tells you." Sam nodded, trembling. The pounding grew violent. Wood splintered. Voices shouted. Marcus eased the back door open into the fog-drenched alley. He pushed Sam out first. Ranger pressed to his side, then followed. The front door crashed in. Boots thundered inside. "Back door!" a voice shouted. They ran, footsteps echoing off wet pavement. Then, a figure loomed in the mist, gun raised. Before Marcus could fire, Ranger lunged. His jaws clamped the man's arm, dragging him down. The gun clattered. The man screamed. "Go!" Marcus barked, dragging Sam past. Ranger released only at Marcus's command, bounding back to shield the boy. They reached the car just as more shadows closed in. Bullets cracked, one shattering the rear window as Marcus shoved Sam and Ranger inside. He slammed the car into gear, tires squealing as they shot into the night. Sam ducked low, Ranger covering him. Marcus drove hard, weaving through streets until gunfire faded. Only when they hit the highway did he allow himself to breathe. In the rearview mirror, Sam clung to Ranger, trembling but alive. Marcus's voice was steady, iron-willed. "They're closing in, but we're still ahead." Sam whispered. "Where will we go?" Marcus tightened his grip on the wheel. "Somewhere safe. But remember this, Sam. They'll have to go through me and him before they ever lay a hand on you again." Ranger's growl rumbled like an oath in the dark. The night pressed heavy over Riverside, the air thick with rain-soaked asphalt and exhaust fumes. From the top floor of his glass tower, Alexander Whitmore looked down on the city he once controlled like a chessboard. Tonight, the lights blurred into streaks of yellow and red beneath the storm. He stood rigid at his mahogany desk, fists clenched so tight his knuckles blanched. His breath came in sharp, measured bursts, but the tremor in his jaw betrayed a fury barely contained. Two men stood at attention beside him, silent, their eyes fixed on the floor. A third, younger and nervous, shuffled papers. "Sir, surveillance confirms Reed's still in the city, but his movements are unpredictable, and there's a German shepherd." Whitmore's hand slammed the desk. Papers jumped. The young man flinched. "Stop. Don't give me excuses. A boy, my boy, slips through our fingers, and a detective thinks he can outmaneuver me?" His voice was a hiss of steel. Carver, his gaunt assistant, cleared his throat. "Sir, questions are rising. Hospitals, contracts. They've noticed irregularities." Whitmore's gaze cut to him cold and sharp. "Irregularities are for fools. I build empires. Empires demand control. Sam is mine. By law, by design, by blood. And anyone who dares deny that will pay." He turned to the wall-sized map glowing red with pins. Hospitals, foundations, safe houses. Cracks in his empire were spreading. Authorities sniffed too close. His empire, carefully built on silence, trembled. He pressed a palm to the cool glass window, staring down at the restless city. "Mobilize everything," he snapped. "Every asset, every operative. I don't care about optics. Bring me the boy. And Reed." He paused, a cruel smile flickering. "Bring me Reed first." His men scattered, phones buzzing with coded orders. Whitmore remained, staring into the storm. In his mind, he saw the boy clutching that mutt, defying him with every breath. His lips curled. "That dog will die first," he whispered. Rain streaked the windshield of Marcus Reed's battered sedan as he guided it through evening traffic. Neon lights bled across wet pavement, horns blared, and the drizzle turned every headlight into a smear of color. In the back seat, Sam huddled in Marcus's jacket, clutching Ranger like a lifeline. The shepherd's head rested on his lap, ears pricked, body taut with vigilance. "Where are we going?" Sam asked, voice barely above the hum of tires. "Someplace safe," Marcus answered, eyes flicking between the road and his mirrors. "I've got friends who'll keep us off the radar. Just hold on." Sam nodded, though his trembling chin betrayed him. Ranger whined softly, leaning into the boy's touch. Traffic thickened near an intersection, brake lights glowing like molten glass. Marcus slowed. That's when he saw it. A black SUV sliding into the lane behind them, windows tinted too dark. Another SUV eased up on the right, keeping pace. His pulse spiked. "Damn!" The SUV to their right veered closer, forcing Marcus to jerk left. Horns exploded. Behind, the second SUV tightened, boxing them in. "Hold on," Marcus barked. He slammed the car into reverse, tires screaming as metal scraped metal. Sam cried out, clutching Ranger, who braced himself with a growl. One SUV skidded sideways. A man jumped out, weapon glinting in the rain. Ranger moved before Marcus could. The shepherd launched through the half-open window, a blur of muscle and fury. He hit the gunman square in the chest, jaws clamping his wrist. The weapon clattered across the asphalt. The man screamed, drowning beneath Ranger's snarls. "Back!" Marcus commanded. Ranger obeyed instantly, bounding back through the window, landing beside Sam. The boy wrapped both arms around his neck, heart hammering. The SUV behind rammed their bumper. The car jolted violently. Marcus fought the wheel. "They want us pinned." Another attacker leaned out a window, pistol raised. Marcus swerved hard. The shot shattered the windshield of a parked car. He floored the accelerator, forcing the sedan between two taxis. Metal scraped, horns blared, but they shot free onto a wider avenue. "Stay down," Marcus shouted. Sam ducked, shielding himself behind Ranger, who snarled at the shattered rear glass, vibrating with restrained violence. Rain slicked the expressway as Marcus gunned the car onto it, weaving between startled drivers. The SUVs followed like wolves on the hunt, headlights cutting through spray. He yanked the wheel, diving into a narrow alley. Sparks flew as the sedan scraped brick walls, trash cans scattering in their wake. The heavier SUVs struggled to follow, buying them seconds. Then the alley opened onto another street, blocked by a third SUV. "Trap!" Marcus hissed. A man stepped from the vehicle, gun raised. Ranger was already gone. The Shepherd flew through the passenger window, slamming the gunman onto his own hood. The weapon clanged into the gutter. Teeth snapped inches from the man's throat until Marcus shouted, "Go, Ranger!" Disciplined as ever, Ranger released and bounded back, leaping into the moving car with a precision born of training. Sam caught his collar, tears streaming down his cheeks. "Good boy. Good boy." Marcus floored the engine, swerving past the SUV with inches to spare. Bullets sparked off metal as they tore into the night. Behind them, Whitmore's men regrouped, but their ambush lay in ruins. Marcus's jaw was iron. "We're not out yet," he said, eyes fixed ahead. "But we're not going down easy." In the mirror, he saw it. Sam, clinging to Ranger, boy and dog bound together in terror and defiance. That sight hardened his resolve. Whitmore could send an army. He would never break that bond. Far across the city, the Whitmore estate lay cloaked in uneasy silence. Stormlight flickered across marble floors. Servants moved like ghosts, their eyes darting toward the east wing. In a room veiled by heavy curtains, Evelyn Whitmore lay propped against pillows. Machines hummed softly, charting every fragile breath. Her lips were pale, her body a wisp beneath the canopy bed. Two doctors hovered at the foot, voices low but edged with panic. "Her pressure is collapsing. We're at the limits of medication. She won't survive the week without intervention," the other finished grimly. The nurse adjusted an IV, hands trembling. "She's too weak for another trial. If we push her further..." The door burst open. Alexander Whitmore entered, thunder in his wake. His gaze swept the machines, then his daughter's face. "What's happening?" His voice cracked like a whip. The lead physician swallowed. "Her condition is deteriorating. The disease is progressing faster than anticipated. Without a transplant..." He faltered, glancing toward Evelyn. Whitmore's jaw locked. "Then you know what must be done." The room froze. Evelyn stirred, lashes fluttering. With immense effort she turned her head, eyes finding her father. Her voice was faint, trembling. "Not like this." He crouched beside her bed, desperation piercing his fury. "Evelyn, listen. You don't understand. You need this. Without it, you'll die." Her lips curved into the faintest smile, sorrowful and resolute. "Better to die than to steal." The nurse blinked away tears. The doctors shifted uneasily. Whitmore gripped his daughter's frail hand. "Don't say that. Everything I've built, all of it, for you. You are my legacy. You will live." Her gaze, dim but unwavering, searched his face. Not at his cost. Not Sam's. The name cut the air like a blade. Silence hung heavy. Whitmore's mask cracked, just for a heartbeat, doubt flickering across his features. But obsession reclaimed him. He rose to his full height, voice hard. "Prepare the surgical team. Find the boy. Bring him here." "Sir," the physician began cautiously, "without the boy's consent." "Consent?" Whitmore thundered. "I don't need consent. I need results. Do your job, or I'll find someone who will." He stormed from the room, footsteps echoing like war drums. Evelyn lay trembling, tears streaking her cheeks. The machines beeped steadily, indifferent to her plea. In her mind, she saw Sam's wide eyes, Ranger's shield of fur and teeth. Her whisper barely stirred the air, yet it carried the weight of her soul. "Please, save him." The courthouse pulsed with tension. Every seat was filled, the air so heavy it pressed on lungs. Reporters clustered at the back, cameras flashing each time the oak doors creaked. Citizens sat shoulder to shoulder, drawn by whispers of a scandal too grotesque to ignore. At the front, under the solemn seal of justice, Alexander Whitmore sat like a king on trial. His suit was flawless, his posture regal, his expression carefully sculpted into patience. But his eyes betrayed him. Hard, restless, darting too often toward the boy across the room. Sam sat beside Marcus at the witness table, dwarfed by the grandeur of the chamber. His small hands gripped Ranger's collar like it was the only solid thing in the world. The shepherd lay stretched at his side, calm but alert, amber eyes fixed on Whitmore with quiet defiance. Each flick of Ranger's ears seemed to register the undercurrent of fear vibrating through the boy. When the judge entered, the room rose. Marcus's jaw clenched. This was it. The day hidden files and whispered confessions would finally claw into the light. Dana Clark, the prosecutor, rose with a presence sharp as a blade. "Your Honor, today we present evidence that the adoption of Samuel Hayes was fraudulent. Documentation was falsified at the highest levels, engineered by Alexander Whitmore to secure the boy for one purpose only: organ harvesting." A gasp rolled through the gallery. The judge raised a hand. "Proceed." Clark nodded. "Detective Marcus Reed, please step forward." Marcus rose, binder in hand. As he passed Sam, Ranger's tail brushed against his leg. A silent vow. At the witness stand, Marcus set the binder down with a sound that cracked through the chamber. "This," he said, opening to the first page, "is the adoption record of Samuel Hayes. An adoption should take months. Background checks, home studies, evaluations. This cleared in 4 days." He flipped pages. "Here are the signatures of officials supposedly involved. 2 were on vacation. 1 deceased. These were forgeries." Murmurs swelled. Whitmore's jaw flexed, mask straining. Marcus pressed on. "Next, medical records. Samuel's name appears on charts as a donor candidate, matched for cardiac tissue. One sheet, dated just 2 weeks after his arrival, has his name circled in red with a single word beside it: donor." Gasps echoed. Sam ducked his head, fingers tightening in Ranger's fur. The shepherd pressed closer, warmth anchoring him. Clark gestured. "Detective, did you also gather testimony?" "Yes." Marcus placed a recorder on the stand. "This is Samuel Hayes describing what he overheard. His account matches the documents. And this," he lifted a folded page, "is a letter smuggled out by Evelyn Whitmore, Alexander's daughter." The hush was absolute as Marcus read aloud. My father intends to take Samuel's heart to replace my own. This is not rumor. It is fact. Please protect him. Please don't fail him." The words hung in the room like a blade. Across the chamber, Whitmore snapped. "Forged. My daughter is gravely ill. She would never—" "Enough," the judge cut sharply. "You will speak in turn." Marcus turned another page, revealing financial transfers. Millions of dollars funneled into hospitals by Whitmore's foundations, each coinciding with the disappearance of children reported nearby. Too precise to be a coincidence. Reporters scribbled furiously. Cameras flashed. Marcus closed the binder. Alexander Whitmore built a mask of philanthropy. Behind it was a system designed to exploit the vulnerable, orphans, sick children, families too desperate to fight back. Samuel Hayes was not the first. He was simply the one who lived to tell it. Whitmore's composure cracked, fury leaking through his smile. Sam dared to lift his head, and for the first time, he saw it. Fear. Not his own, but Whitmore's. The judge struck the gavel. "This court will recess for 1 hour." Marcus returned to Sam's side. Ranger shifted to cover them both. Sam whispered, "Did we win?" Marcus crouched. "Not yet. But the truth is out. And once it's out, it can't be buried again." Sam leaned into Ranger, who licked his cheek, sealing the vow. Across the room, Whitmore sat rigid, mask shattered, his empire trembling on the edge of collapse. When court resumed, a bailiff wheeled in a large monitor. The gallery buzzed. Evelyn Whitmore would testify live from her hospital bed. The screen flickered, then steadied. Evelyn lay propped against pillows, skin pale, hair damp against her temples. Machines hummed steadily around her. Fragile, porcelain. Yet when her eyes lifted to the camera, the room stilled. Dana Clark stepped forward. "Miss Whitmore, can you state your name for the record?" Her lips curved faintly. "Evelyn Grace Whitmore." Clark's voice softened. "Evelyn, what do you know about Samuel Hayes?" A long silence stretched. Then her words broke like fragile glass. "He wasn't adopted. He was chosen. Because his heart matches mine." Gasps rippled. Sam buried his face in Ranger's neck. The shepherd growled softly, as if sensing the weight of her confession. Evelyn's voice trembled. "I overheard the doctors. My father. They said Samuel's life, his heart, would save me. He was brought here for me. And I was too afraid to stop them." Tears shimmered. "The only thing I could do was send that letter." Whitmore exploded, surging up. "Lies! She's sick, manipulated. She doesn't know what she says." The judge's gavel cracked. "Mr. Whitmore, one more outburst, and you'll be removed." Evelyn wiped her cheeks, her gaze steadying on the camera. He never saw Samuel as a boy, only as a part, a means to an end. Her breath hitched. "But to me, he was the only one who ever looked at me and saw more than my illness. Just me." Sam lifted his head, eyes brimming. For the first time, he wasn't only a victim, he was recognized, seen. The judge leaned forward. "Miss Whitmore, do you wish to add anything further?" Evelyn's voice dropped to a whisper. "Please, protect him. Don't let my father win." The screen went black. The silence that followed was heavier than any evidence binder. Sam whispered, "She saved me again." Marcus's hand settled firm on his shoulder. "She gave us the truth, and now the truth will break him." When the jury filed back in, the chamber held its breath. Reporters leaned forward, pens trembling. The foreman held a slip of paper, his jaw tight. "On the charge of conspiracy to commit illegal organ harvesting," the judge intoned, How do you find the defendant? The foreman lifted his gaze. Guilty. Gasps burst across the gallery. Sam pressed into Ranger's fur, tears spilling, the shepherd whining low, sharing his relief. The judge continued. On the charge of fraud in adoption proceedings, guilty. And on the charge of conspiracy to endanger minors, guilty. The gallery erupted, reporters scribbling furiously, cameras flashing, spectators whispering in disbelief. Whitmore, once hailed as a savior, was unmasked as a predator. Order, the judge barked, gavel cracking. All eyes turned to Whitmore. The mask was gone. His face twisted, sweat beading, eyes blazing. He surged to his feet. Lies. You think a court can erase me? I built this city. I saved thousands. He jabbed a finger at Marcus. He poisoned my daughter against me. He stole my son. Ranger rose, muscles taut, growl deep and unyielding. His golden eyes locked on Whitmore, silencing the chamber. Enough, the judge thundered. Mr. Whitmore, you are remanded into custody pending sentencing. Bail denied. 2 officers seized him. He thrashed, spitting fury, but his power no longer filled the room. Cameras flashed like lightning as reporters shouted, "Do you deny the charges? What about your daughter? What about the children?" His roars drowned beneath the cacophony. Sam lifted his head. For the first time, he looked Whitmore straight in the eye and whispered, "You don't own me." Marcus crouched beside him, voice low but steady. "You're free, Sam. Free to live, to choose, to be more than what he planned for you." Sam's tears flowed, but this time they carried release. Ranger licked his hand, sealing the promise with a soldier's oath only a dog could give. Outside, the storm had cleared. Sunlight spilled across the marble courthouse steps. Reporters swarmed, headlines already forming. Whitmore indicted, humanitarian or monster. Empire of lies collapses in court. German shepherd saves boy at center of scandal. But for Sam, the noise faded. What mattered wasn't the headlines or the shouting world beyond. What mattered was the weight that had lifted. The first breath he could take without fear. Beside him stood Marcus and Ranger, a detective, a dog, and a boy, bound not by blood or law, but by loyalty, survival, and a truth powerful enough to bring down a giant. The courthouse felt different that morning. Gone were the reporters shouting questions. Gone was the suffocating weight of Whitmore's shadow. The halls echoed only with the shuffle of papers, the low murmur of clerks. For Sam, who sat between Marcus and Ranger on a wooden bench, it felt like stepping out from a storm into sunlight. Strange, blinding, almost too good to believe. Marcus leaned down, steady hand on the boy's shoulder. "This is the last step," he said gently. "After today, no more looking over your shoulder." Sam's voice wavered. "And I'll stay with you? For real?" Marcus's smile was quiet, but certain. For real. At that, Ranger barked once, low and approving, his tail sweeping the floor. Sam laughed, small, shy, but real, and buried his face in the shepherd's neck. "We're really gonna be a family," he whispered. When their case was called, Marcus guided Sam into a small chamber. No flashing cameras, no furious cross-examinations, just papers stacked neatly on the judge's desk and the scent of polished wood. The judge, a woman with kind eyes, looked down at Sam before addressing Marcus. "Detective Reed, you've petitioned for guardianship of Samuel Hayes. Do you understand the responsibility you're undertaking?" "Yes, Your Honor," Marcus said without hesitation. "He deserves stability. He deserves a home. I can give him that." The judge turned to Sam, her voice softening. "And you, Samuel? Do you want Detective Reed to be your guardian?" Sam looked at Marcus, then at Ranger, who sat like a sentinel at his feet. His throat tightened, but his words carried clear. "Yes, I want him. I want us." The judge's expression warmed. "Then let's make it official." The clerk slid papers across the desk. Marcus signed with bold strokes, each mark a promise carved into permanence. Then the pen was placed in Sam's hand. His letters wobbled, but determination steadied them. When the judge stamped the document, the sound echoed like a heartbeat. "It's done," she said. "Samuel Hayes is now under the guardianship of Marcus Reed." For a moment, Sam only stared. Then Ranger barked joyfully, as if sensing the truth first. The boy threw his arms around the shepherd's neck, sobbing into his fur. Marcus knelt beside them. "You're safe, kid. This is your home now, ours, together." Through tears, Sam whispered, "I never thought anyone would want me." Marcus's throat ached, but his voice was steady. "I don't just want you, Sam. You're my son now, and no one will ever take that from us." Back at the apartment, the changes were small but profound. Marcus had cleared drawers for Sam, space in the closet, a desk by the window. On the dresser sat a frame waiting for its photo, the one a court clerk had snapped that morning of man, boy, and dog together. Sam unpacked his few belongings, fingers lingering on the picture. His smile was tentative, but no longer broken. That night, Marcus tucked him in beneath a quilt. Ranger leapt onto the bed, circling once before settling with his head on Sam's chest. The boy whispered into the dark, "We're really a family now." Ranger's tail thumped once in reply. From the doorway, Marcus watched, his voice soft as he switched off the light. "Yes, Sam. Always." For the first time, the boy who had once been reduced to a word on a chart, donor, closed his eyes not in fear, but in belonging. The weeks after the verdict moved slowly, like dawn stretching over a battered landscape. For Sam, life became something unimaginable, ordinary. He went to school with a backpack slung over one shoulder. He came home to the smell of Marcus's cooking, garlic, roasted chicken, chili simmering on the stove. Evenings were filled with homework at the kitchen table. Ranger sprawled at his feet. These were small things, quiet things. But to Sam, they were miracles. Yet Evelyn lingered in his thoughts. He remembered her pale eyes, her trembling voice as she testified. She had risked everything to save him. One autumn afternoon, a letter arrived. The handwriting was delicate, familiar. "Dear Sam, they've moved me to a hospital far from the estate. The doctors here ask what I want, not just what my father demanded. Treatment will be long, but it's my choice. For the first time, I feel free. I'm sorry for what I didn't say sooner. Please be happy. Please live the way I never could. Evelyn." Tears blurred the ink as Sam pressed the letter to his chest. Marcus found him at the table, silent but radiant with hope. "From her?" he asked softly. Sam nodded. "She's free now. She wants me to live." Marcus smiled. "Then maybe it's time you wrote back." That night, with Ranger curled close, Sam began his reply. "Dear Evelyn, I don't blame you. You saved me more than once. I live with Detective Reed now. He's not just my guardian, he's my dad. And Ranger is like my brother. Sometimes we laugh so hard I forget the bad parts. You're free now, and so am I. Your friend, Sam." The exchange became their ritual. Each week, letters came. her describing the trees outside her window, the kindness of nurses, the books she read, his sharing school stories, bike lessons, Ranger's thieving paws on the counter. Across distance, two children scarred by one man's cruelty stitched themselves back together. One evening, Sam read a new letter aloud at dinner. Dear Sam, I dreamed of the sea. Not the dark waves of the estate, but a bright sea full of light. You were there, and Ranger too. It means healing is possible. Thank you for reminding me I am more than what my father tried to make me. We both are. Sam's voice trembled, but his eyes shone. She's getting stronger. Marcus stirred the pan on the stove. So are you. Ranger thumped his tail as if in agreement. Later that night, Sam sat cross-legged on the rug. Ranger sprawled across his lap. He bent his head against the shepherd's neck, whispering, "You gave me my life back." Ranger shifted, licked his cheek once, then rested his head down again. His tail thumped in slow, steady beats. Marcus stood in the doorway, the sight rooting him still. The boy and the dog, two souls scarred, now stitched together. His chest ached with gratitude. He thought of the rain-soaked night he first found Sam, of Evelyn's fragile plea, of the trial that shattered Whitmore's empire. All of it had led to this. A boy who believed again, a dog who had given him back his life, a family forged in survival. Sam's voice broke the quiet again. I thought I was just a file, a donor, nothing more. But you showed me I mattered. He clung tighter to Ranger. I'll never forget. Marcus knelt beside him. He's right, you know. Ranger did fight for you, but so did you. You never gave up. That's courage most grown men don't have. Sam turned tear-bright eyes to him. But if you hadn't been there, if Ranger hadn't, you'd still be here, Marcus said firmly, because you were meant to survive, because you're stronger than what they tried to make you. And because of him. Ranger huffed, as if acknowledging the truth. Sam hugged the shepherd fiercely. You're my brother. Always. The dog stilled, eyes closing, body relaxed. The vow was sealed. Marcus rose, moving to the window. Outside, the city lights shimmered against dusk. Life went on. Chaotic, restless, but in this small apartment, something rare had taken root. Hope. Behind him, Sam whispered into Ranger's fur. We'll never be alone now. Marcus smiled, voice thick but certain. No, kid. Never. Ranger's tail thumped once more, sealing the promise. Months later, on a quiet morning, Marcus found Sam on the stoop, tying the laces of his sneakers. Ranger sat beside him, tail sweeping the pavement. The boy looked up, face lit with a smile not haunted, but whole. Marcus's chest tightened. He remembered another night, the rain, the terror, the boy trembling under Whitmore's shadow. Now here he was, laughing at Ranger's floppy ears, ready to run into a future that belonged to him. As they walked together down the sunlit street, man, boy, and dog, the past no longer clung like chains. What bound them now was stronger: loyalty, courage, and love. And for the first time, it wasn't survival holding them together. It was family. Sometimes the most powerful stories aren't about heroes in uniforms or men with power, but about the quiet loyalty of a dog who stands between us and the dark. German shepherds have a way of teaching us that love doesn't need words, that devotion is felt in a steady gaze, a protective bark, or the weight of their head resting against our hand. These animals remind us that family isn't always about blood. It's about who stays, who protects, and who loves without asking for anything in return. If you've ever looked into the eyes of a dog, you already know what I mean. If you'd like to explore ways to deepen that bond with your own dog, there's a resource I've found meaningful. Not a program or a pitch, just thoughtful guidance for building trust and connection. I'll leave the link here for you to look at if you feel called. Thank you for sharing this journey with me. And if this story touched your heart, maybe take a moment tonight to scratch your dog's ears a little longer. They deserve it, and so do you.